You want to be happy when you go to work. You want to be happy when it's there. And unfortunately, owners, managers, bosses, that's your responsibility to make sure that happens. That is your job to make sure that happens. So you guys have to look at each person individually. You have to have a relationship with each individual, and you have to make sure that they're in a good mood and they're being productive. I will tell you that this is probably one of the most detrimental things that we have ever seen in all of the cultures and all the companies that we go to. We're teaching how to do organizational software. That's what we do. And every single time we go to do the organizational software, we teach it 70 or 80% of the time, but the other 30 to 20% of the time, we're actually fixing companies of their bad habits. And a lot of those bad habits came from the crankiness of employees because they didn't feel good. They didn't feel the right way. Now let's flip the script. Let's go the exact opposite way. Why would an employee feel upset or feel cranky or feel, just frustrated? And we see this on the flip side. The owners are not investing in them. They think they're a number instead of a human being. The owner also doesn't appreciate them and their thoughts. We're human beings. Even as an owner of a company, I'm a human being. I make mistakes. I'm doing the best I can. I learn from my experiences. I put forth my best foot forward. But even then, there's always room to make it better. And if I'm not listening to my employees, if I'm not listening to my team to make it better and they have a good idea, I'm not doing them any justice. I'm not respecting them at all. And I'm basically hurting my company by saying that I'm the best, I know what's best. So you as an owner need to be able to take criticism, constructive criticism, very easily. That should be like second nature. I will tell you, for me personally, I love criticism all the time because it makes me better. People that criticize me in a constructive manner, they're my close friends instantly, because I know that they are trying to help me do better. They're trying to help the company do better. They're trying to make this a better team. Their head's in the right spot. When you hire people, they go, what attributes or abilities do you bring to the table? And they rattle off, I'm on time, I'm a self-starter, and I have good ideas. One of that last one, those good ideas, if you're listening, that might make your company so much more efficient, which of course trickles down to the bottom line and makes your company a lot more profitable if you're listening to them. And so this last consulting gig that I came back from, they had all three. They had a taskmaster, they had a negative Nancy, and then they had an owner that wasn't listening to them. They had all three of these scenarios that created a whirlwind of negative energy. It was like this undercurrent inside the company that was just eroding away at all the efficiencies and the fun of being at this company. And it was just this cranky river that was flowing underneath the company of just sabotage. It was sabotage, for lack of a better term. It really was, because they were sabotaging the good environment that it was. And for what? So they could be heard, so that they had to make a fuss. So were we toddlers again, where we had to make such a fuss to be recognized or paid attention to? Maybe we go back to our innate ability when we don't get heard or we get frustrated. I don't know. I'm sure Freud would have something to say about that. But in the end, they didn't listen, I guess. As I'm kind of coming to this conclusion myself as I'm talking out loud here, they didn't listen to each other. And that goes back to those relationships. And to have a good relationship, you have to have a good back and forth.